bring in now John Yoo, former Deputy Assistant AG. John, thanks for coming on. So let's take a look at the bigger picture when it comes to this case, because this is obviously going to have a ripple effect. The Trump administration has been really frustrated with these nationwide injunctions. There have been 40 of them so far in his second term already. This ruling seems like it has the potential to maybe break the chains off his agenda a little bit here.
I think that's right. This decision frees the Trump administration from having to run at the beck and call of every single district judge in the country, of which there are almost 1,000. And so what's going to happen now is that the Trump administration will have to stop its executive orders only in the courts where those judges decide against them, but still be able to pursue their policies in the rest of the country. Now, the dissenters in the opinion, let me be clear, this is a very important, significant victory for the Trump administration at the Supreme Court. One, I think that a lot of people did not foresee back in January or February when the president took office and started issuing the executive orders. Now, the downside is we're going to have fragmentation of federal law throughout the country. This is something the Supreme Court does not want, that most federal courts don't want to tolerate. That's, in fact, why we have an appellate system and the Supreme Court, to make sure there's only one rule of federal law. So what's going to have to happen in addition to this, both for the Trump administration and for the parties that are challenging his rules, is that the Supreme Court is going to have to accelerate the review of questions like the birthright citizenship question to get them to the Supreme Court faster, so that we don't have, say, a district court in Massachusetts and a district court in Texas enforcing different interpretations of the birthright citizenship question in their courts.
Jonathan Turley, I'm just following you on X as we go along, and I don't know how you got to footnote 8 already, but you did. Can you explain what you mean that this is significant?
Well, I think it is very significant. The majority is really pushing back on Justice Sotomayor, saying you can't show me any case law on the universal jurisdiction. And they're saying, well, that's the point, is that it's silent, because this, effectively, they say this didn't exist for the framers. They didn't anticipate this, and they certainly didn't anticipate this at the beginning of the Republic. Now, Justice Alito, in his opinion, does flag that the opinion stops a bit short in establishing clarity on issues like class certification. The assumption is, and some people pushed this in the oral argument, that if you want a national injunction, just certify a national class, show that you represent people nationally. There are many that did not want that to happen because it adds a burden for the plaintiffs. Justice Alito is saying, you still left a little bit of wiggle room here that makes me feel uncomfortable, but I don't see how you could see this as anything but a tremendous victory for the Trump administration.
Yeah, 119-page ruling. Everybody digesting it right now. Jonathan going a little bit faster than us here on the desk. Andy, want to bring you back in here. So conservatives in the Trump administration have been frustrated, essentially saying they feel that some of these plaintiffs are judge shopping and district shopping. There's 670 federal judges across the country. You go to one left-leaning court somewhere in San Francisco or Boston, and all of a sudden you get a nationwide injunction that stops everything going on in the country. With this ruling, is that now over?
Well, it's not over, but it'll be significantly curtailed. Jonathan just pointed out that Justice Alito says that there's some wiggle room here. That doesn't surprise me, because the court, including Justice Barrett during the oral argument, seemed to be very sensitive to the downsides of potentially making a rule that said no universal injunctions at all. So I think there'll still be some wiggle room here. We shouldn't delude ourselves. Both sides do this sort of thing. I think when during the Biden years, it was pretty typical for right-leaning states and groups to go to venues like Texas to file actions that involved enforcement of the federal immigration laws bill. So, this is a game that everybody plays, this forum shopping thing. In a way, if you're a lawyer, it'd be irresponsible not to play it if everybody else is doing it. But to the extent that it gets curtailed, I think that's a good thing for the country.
Shannon Bream, let's bring you back in. What else do you know?
So Justice Jackson wrote a dissent, and she said, I agree with everything that Justice Sotomayor said, but I have to add my own 2 cents to this thing. And boy, is it scorched earth. She goes on to say in her dissent, perhaps the degradation of our rule of law regime would happen anyway, but this court's complicity in the creation of a culture of disdain for lower courts, their rulings and the law as they interpret it, will surely hasten the downfall of our governing institutions, enabling our collective demise. She goes on from there, but clearly she sees this decision as something she obviously disagrees with, but as a very threat to the structure of our courts and our institutions as they now exist. I understand there is something that Justice Barrett said in the majority with respect to answering Justice Jackson's dissent. I'm trying to tick back to that. But also a reminder for folks, Justice Barrett was a law professor for a long time before she got into the world of being a federal judge. She also taught classes in civil procedure, which is one of the first things that I had my first year in law school. You get it as a first-year student. But it gets to the heart of how things proceed, how the court system works. So it does make sense now that even being a more junior justice, why she would have written this opinion. And it gets to this opinion, a lot of those questions that you've heard our other panelists bring up here about certification of class actions. It takes a lot of work. It is not easy to do. And there are cautions throughout this opinion that district court judges not now simply default to that. So I'm going to go back and find Justice Barrett.
Shannon, let me ask you one question, if you don't mind.
Jackson clearly sees this.
If you don't mind, one more question before you go back
Sure.
to that. So, as you've explained to us many times over the years, most Supreme Court cases end up 9-0. There's a lot of agreement. But then on these bigger cases, you do see the breakdown like this. Okay, so President Trump benefits from having a conservative majority in this court. But I think this is interesting because on this case in particular, it was Elena Kagan, one of the dissenters today in 2022, and I won't play it, I'll just read it here. It just can't be right that one district judge can stop a nationwide policy in its tracks and leave it stopped for the years that it takes to go through the normal process. So she said that in 2022. I guess that's why we've all thought it likely that President Trump would get a win here. Now it looks like he got a resounding win. But Elena Kagan went with the dissenters on this. And I'm curious about that decision, what you think is going on with the dynamics of the court with that.
Yeah, great question. So you're right. We had been watching her because she'd publicly talked about during the Biden years how this wasn't a good policy. It shouldn't be the way that the framers or the founders would have intended this to work. But during the arguments here, May 15th, and remember, this was a rare ad. They don't hear arguments in May. They did it for this case. She differentiated during the oral arguments, saying that this was a different case. This did not line up with the statements that she had made during the Biden administration, saying that this was a different situation. So we thought there that we saw from her during the oral arguments that she may peel off and go in a different direction. So she clearly has signed on to Justice Sotomayor's dissent. That's where she lands today. As to Justice Jackson and that very existential threat to our institutions dissent that she wrote, here's what Justice Barrett wrote in the majority opinion to that. She says, Justice Jackson chooses a startling line of attack that is tethered neither to the sources that they sort in coming to their conclusions or, frankly, to any doctrine whatsoever, waving away attention to the limits on judicial power as a mind-numbingly technical query. She offers a vision of the judicial role that would make even the most ardent defender of judicial supremacy blush. In her telling, the fundamental role of courts is to order everyone, including the executive, to follow the law, full stop. So some harsh words back and forth between a couple of the justices, as sometimes happens in these heated opinions. We understand Justice Sotomayor is reading her dissent from the bench. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does when there's a very heated feeling about that dissent. So that continues.
And Shannon, stand by. We're just getting some reaction from AG Pam Bondi. She just put out a post on X moments ago. I'm not sure if we have it ready yet, so I'm just going to read it off the phone. She says, quote, today the Supreme Court instructed district courts to stop the endless barrage of nationwide injunctions against President Trump. This would not have been possible without tireless work from our excellent lawyers, the Justice Department, and our Solicitor General, John Sauer. This Department of Justice will continue to zealously defend the president's policies and his authority to implement them. Jonathan, victory lap right there.
Well, I think it's warranted. I must say, by the way, that The section of the opinion where Justice Barrett goes after Justice Jackson makes for some pretty sporty reading. I mean, she delivers a haymaker where she essentially accuses Justice Jackson of embracing judicial supremacy and somewhat mocks her hyperbolic response. I mean, the Jackson dissent itself is rather radioactive. I mean, she talks about the collective demise that will come from all of this. That clearly rubbed Justice Barrett wrong. I mean, the notable thing about this is that Barrett has shown a willingness in past cases to vote with the liberal justices. She is not robotic or rigid in that sense, but she clearly took umbrage at the language in the Jackson dissent. Justice Jackson of late has been more hyperbolic, more heated, frankly, in some of her opinions. And Justice Barrett here is pushing back in an uncommonly direct way for an opinion.
John, your thoughts about the dynamics on the court here?
I think Justice Jackson's rhetoric is exaggerated. Look, people watching, Americans should not worry about the rule of law collapsing in the country just because there's going to be a few more months of delay between when the Supreme Court gets to hear a decision and differences in federal law in the country. We already have a system that is built to tolerate different interpretations of federal law. That's why we have 13 geographic courts of appeals. That's why it all goes to the Supreme Court. Even if this rule is wrong, even if the majority made a mistake, the Supreme Court will still get these constitutional questions, maybe just a few months later than under this current system. And at the same time, the president, who is elected through a democratic process, will be able to enforce the agenda on which he or she is elected. So I think Justice Jackson, I'm afraid to say, is really exaggerating, crying wolf. And what's the problem here is that this is not that important a case when it comes to the Constitution. This is really just an important case about the judiciary limiting its own jurisdiction in a democratic system where judges have lifetime tenure and are never elected. So the thing you would have to worry about on the court and its dynamics, and Justice Jackson and the other two liberals, is if they're going to cry wolf and say a case like this, which is fairly technical, as Shannon said, a case of technical civil procedure, which most Americans, I hope, never have to learn except a few lawyers. If they're going to cry wolf about this, say the rule of law is collapsing, when are we ever going to believe them when that actually is the case? This is, I think that the liberals on the court are just shooting off their ammunition when it's not appropriate, and they are depleting any kind of political capital they have with their colleagues. They're ruining their opportunities to try to engage and get some kind of compromise in their direction. I think it's going to make the 6 justices who've been appointed by Republican presidents feel more like they're in the same foxhole, make them more cooperative with each other and less tempted to cooperate with the 3 liberals on the court.
Andy, I think there will be some viewers at home who are wondering, hey, I thought this was about birthright citizenship. Where's the answer on that? You know, all this talk about injunctions. So what's next in terms of the constitutionality of Trump's executive order when it comes to birthright citizenship? Because he wants to end it.
Yeah, well, this is why I'm sort of emphatically nodding as John is speaking, because to my mind, I would say 7 chances or more in 10 that Trump is going to lose, the Trump administration is going to lose on birthright citizenship. I don't say that with great happiness. I actually, I like the policy that they want to push. I just don't see, in terms of precedent, how you get around the prior Supreme Court governing case on this from, I think, the late 19th century. But you know, the hysteria over this and the back and forth, which is vitriolic over this really judicial procedural case, belies the likely outcome of this, which I think is that the progressives are actually going to win the case in the end.
All right, Shannon Bream, let's go back to you for a moment. You've got a little bit more as I see you rifling through those papers.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, it's starting to rain out here today. It's just one of those days at the Supreme Court where it is raining down also from the bench. We talked about, and we've all talked about, this back and forth between the dissent from Justice Jackson, which is really, really forceful and very gloomy about the future of the judicial institution. And we talked about some of what Justice Barrett said in response to her in the majority opinion. She spent several pages expressing where she feels Justice Jackson has gone too far. She ends her portion of the Justice Jackson majority opinion saying this: Justice Jackson would do well to heed her own admonition that everyone from the president on down is bound by the law. That goes for judges, too. So I can only imagine, as they had the initial vote after they heard this case May 15th, there's been a lot of sparring back and forth within the building behind me, because some of these dissents feel very personal, and the back and forth with the majority opinion at times. As I said, Justice Sotomayor is reading from the majority dissent right now. What will be interesting to me is to see if Justice Jackson reads from her dissent. It's the secondary. She was the only one. There's no sign on to that Justice Jackson dissent. It would be very rare. I don't know that I've ever seen that happen in the years I've been covering the court. But because this thing has been so heated back and forth between these two justices, I'm watching to see if maybe Justice Jackson gets a chance to read from the bench as well. We've got 5 more opinions to come, but this one, of course, taking all the headlines and oxygen while we wait.
I love our all-star team. Thank you, Shannon. And we are just going to take a quick break. We are waiting for those additional cases to come through.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.